9:32 in New York, same as D.C., and there we have a live look on the Senate floor. We're at the moment. Nevada Senator Harry Reid's farewell address is about to begin, retiring after 3 decades in D.C. We should see the vice president. We should see Hillary Clinton on the floor of the U.S. Senate for this event. So we'll keep an eye on it and pass it along to you in a minute.
Big moment. I'll be watching.
Balance for me is if the president-elect populates even more positions with the administration with other military figures, I'm going to have a lot of heartburn about this. It's going to place the Mattis waiver in real jeopardy.
The kinds of people that President-elect Trump has chosen appear to have, in many cases, different priorities, different styles, and in some cases, starkly different bank accounts.
What do you think about that? So the Trump administration taking shape. Critics expressing some concern that the president-elect is leaning too heavily on billionaires and generals. This as House Republicans look to fast-track the appointment of General James Mattis as Secretary of Defense. GOP lawmakers tweaking a last-minute funding bill that includes language that would allow Mattis to sidestep the requirement that service members be retired for 7 years before taking the reins. He's been out since 2013, so let's bring in Republican Congressman from Ohio, Jim Jordan, member of the House Judiciary Committee and the Committee on Oversight and Government Reform. Good morning to you, Congressman. Great to have you with us this morning.
Good to be with you,
tell us how you think this process is going to go on Mattis.
I think you'll get the waiver. I mean, generally speaking, I think presidents should be given fairly wide latitude and a good deal of deference in their selections. And then when you think about someone like General Mattis and his amazing service to our great country, I think this will sail through the House without a whole lot of pushback from the other side.
All right. Moving on to topic number 2, because I have a number of things I want to ask you about this morning. I want to play this soundbite from Special Report last evening from George Will, because you, as a member of the Freedom Caucus, are very concerned with true conservatism. So let's play George Will and get your thoughts on that.
The problem is when you have, in the Carrier case, political power used to bring pressure upon a privately held corporation that has a fiduciary duty to maximize shareholder value and drive them off with political pressure from making economic decisions about economic assets, you are in effect at the end of the day getting the federal government involved in capital allocation. There's a name for that. It's called socialism.
So he's saying that Carrier and the interference, as he's putting it, by Donald Trump in these issues amounts to socialism, and that it's enabling certain entities because they're getting helped out and they're becoming victims of sorts in society, essentially.
Yeah, you don't want government picking winners and losers. You don't want cronyism, which he's had way too much of in the Obama administration. And so government should not be coming in with its heavy hand trying to pressure companies to do certain things or reward them with taxpayer dollars for engaging in certain kind of behavior. But what I think largely happened here was they went to Carrier and said, look, there's a new game in town. We're actually going to get a tax policy that makes sense. You were just talking in the previous segment about lowering the corporate rate, maybe even doing something I think makes sense, taking our corporate rate to the lowest in the world from where it is now, the highest in the world. So you do that. That's the thing I think companies are seeing and why the market is up. They're seeing, look, there's going to be real tax reform, real regulatory relief coming, and we're going to create an environment that's conducive to economic growth. Why wouldn't we want to headquarter here, stay here, and keep jobs here? That's the message I think is being largely conveyed. But I think Mr. Will is right. Never have the heavy hand of government come in, but let's talk about how we're going to create an environment that's conducive to growth.
Are you okay with the heavy hand of government when it pertains to taxpayer dollars going to federal contracts like Air Force One? And should we have more bidders and more interaction and more holding feet to the fire in terms of budgeting on those issues?
Of course, you always want competition. I mean, competition produces excellence. Competition is the most efficient way to allocate resources. That's just basic economics. So, of course, you want competition. You never want this cronyism environment that we've had for 8 years where government picks the favorite industry, like the green energy, and we give money to Solyndra, Beacon Power, Abound Solar, and then all these companies go bankrupt after they got a bunch of taxpayer money. Right. You certainly don't want that. And I think that's what's being conveyed and why you're seeing businesses say, okay, this looks great, and why you're seeing the market go up.
All right. I want to take you back down memory lane here for a moment. Let's play this.
Late in March, she came in front of this committee and did not tell us that He didn't tell us. Her computer failed. Wasn't quite sure we'd lost them all. Who told you this information? You can't remember?
No, I do not remember.
Who'd you tell? Did you tell the White House?
I never told the White House.
When'd you tell Congress?
We produced the public report 10 days ago.
So has John Koskinen carried out his duties to clean up the way things are done at the IRS?
Not even close. He allowed 422 backup tapes to be destroyed. He learned Lois Lerner's emails were missing. He waited 4 months to tell Congress. In that time frame, he made numerous false statements to Congress, and yet the House of Representatives voted to send the resolution that we brought forward to impeach him, voted to send that resolution back to the very committee it's been in for 18 months. This is so frustrating, not just to me, but frustrating to the American people who just a month ago voted to drain the swamp, clean this place up, and hold people accountable. People like John Koskinen, whose agency targeted, never forget the underlying offense here. They targeted people for their political beliefs. You can't have that happen in a great country like ours. You cannot say, because you're a conservative, we're going to come after you. Or you can't have it the other way, frankly, either. Because you're liberal, we're going to come after, particularly an agency with the power and the clout of the IRS. And so this is what's so frustrating to so many Americans. We were told on election day, come here and clean this place up. We had a chance to do it the other day, and unfortunately, we didn't get the votes.
Yeah, and part of that was because of people on your own side of the aisle, and clearly this would be an example of the kind of drain the swamp mentality that was so powerful in the election. Let me ask you one more question with regard to that. Has Speaker Ryan or anyone in leadership directed you in any way to drop the investigations into Hillary Clinton?
Not that I know of. And frankly, look, we should treat everyone the same. It's called equal treatment under the law. It's one of the hallmarks of this great nation. And you can't have what we have now, which is a double standard at the Justice Department. One set of rules for you and me, a different set for politically connected people like John Koskinen and Hillary Clinton. So if anyone else would continue to be investigated, then so should Secretary Clinton, and that's our job.
I got to go, but I got to press you on that very quickly. Is the investigation into Hillary Clinton ongoing?
I believe it is, and Chairman Chaffetz has indicated as much in his statements publicly the last few weeks.
Representative Jim Jordan, always good to have you here, sir. Thank you very much.
Thanks, Martha. Thank you.
Some frightening moments out of Reno, Nevada, when a high school student starts waving a knife and threatening classmates. That's when a campus police officer took action. Some of this is certainly disturbing, but this is how it ended. It was a single gunshot. Chief Correspondent Jonathan Hunt live in L.A. to tell us what happened prior to that. Good morning.
Good morning, Bill. This was disturbing for everyone at Hug High School, beginning around 11:30 in the morning when a disturbance was reported on campus.
There was an altercation between two students on campus. At some point following that altercation, one student, a 14-year-old male, had armed himself with a knife. Once armed with a knife, the student began threatening others on campus.
And here's that moment. You can see the student in the blue T-shirt with what looks like a large knife in his hand, apparently threatening other students as someone says, back up, back up. Then the moment the police officer takes down the student with a single gunshot. Witnesses say the officer had ordered the student to drop the knife and fired when he refused to obey that command. The school was immediately put on lockdown as students and parents alike dealt with the shock.
He's going around telling everybody he's going to shoot and stab everybody. So, I mean, he finally did it, and he got shot.
There was a shooting over at Hug. I was like, what? And I just got so desperate. I ran out of house and just came. I just feel nervous. I'm like desperate. I just can't wait to hug her.
The student who was shot, Bill, was taken immediately to the hospital. He's currently listed in critical condition.
Oh,
Bill?
what a story play out there. You seldom see the prior. We did. Jonathan Hunt in L.A., thank you. Martha.
So what did President Obama really know about ISIS, how much it was growing, how much it was spreading during the terror group's early days?
To be completely honest and say the rise of the Islamic State surprised you. It took you by surprise. It took the administration by surprise.
The answer to that question, as our panel debates whether President Obama was truly caught off guard.
Our focus must be on defeating terrorism and destroying ISIS.
To be completely honest and say The rise of the Islamic State surprised you. It took you by surprise. It took the administration by surprise.
The ability of ISIL to initiate major land offensives, that was not on my intelligence radar.
President Obama there reflecting on his legacy as his time winds down. Doug Schoen, former advisor to President Bill Clinton, Monica Crowley, online opinion editor for the Washington Times, and both are Fox News contributors. Good day to both of you. Just the last end of that. That was not on my intelligence radar. How did you hear that?
Well, it directly contradicts what the intelligence community and the military were telling the public, as well as the president, as early 2014. So this did not come as a surprise to President Obama. Remember that he was and is ideologically allergic to any military interventions in the Middle East. Therefore, he did not want to hear what the military and the intelligence communities were telling him about the rise of ISIS.
Is he using the intel community as rationale? Doug, how do you hear that phrase?
I heard this. The word that comes to mind is damning on the intelligence community, the president, the national security advisor. Bill, to have our country be at risk in the fundamental way it was and is, and the president say, we missed it. Goodness gracious. I mean, this scares me as an American. With all that we spend on intelligence, we missed it. I think also his policies led to it. I think pulling out of Iraq, no status of forces agreement, time limit in Afghanistan, red lines crossed in Syria, all of it contributed.
And Petraeus was asked about this too. He said, you know, we could have left 10,000. I don't know if it would have been successful or not, but I would have liked to have tried it. I take you back to, what was it, January 2014, on screen now. The analogy we use around here sometimes, and I think is accurate, is if a JV team puts on the Lakers uniforms, that does not make them Kobe Bryant.
Right, and what we now know is that the intelligence was being manipulated, possibly on the orders of the White House, in order to try to minimize the threat, because, again, the intelligence communities and the military leadership, they saw this developing. They warned the commander-in-chief that this was happening. To Doug's point, they knew that this was happening. It wasn't that they missed it. It was that the president of the United States did not want to hear it because he didn't want to have to act on it.
Bill, I wish I could disagree with that as an American. This isn't a partisan issue. We failed. The new president-elect Donald Trump has got a heck of a job to have to do because we failed as an administration and as a country, not Democrats versus Republicans.
Another comment about elections. Northern states, southern states. Watch.
Attitudes about my presidency among whites in northern states are very different from whites in southern states. So, you know, are there folks whose primary concern about me has been that I seem foreign, the other? Are those who champion the birther movement, you know, feeding off of bias? Absolutely.
He was elected.
And re-elected resoundingly by the American people. The fact that this president is playing the race card in the final days of his presidency, an 8-year term, I find particularly appalling.
So do I. And I must say, Bill, the fact that he is not speaking about racial unity, didn't achieve racial unity, and didn't appeal to people's best instincts, regardless of race or regional part of the country, that so discourages me. I say that as somebody who believes in civil rights, has worked for civil rights, and to hear a president doing that is very sad.
He failed on both these counts.
I think so.
You're both saying
big failures, yeah.
Washington Times today, Crowley, Donald Trump and the art of getting it done. She quotes Elle Woods, and that is your tease for her piece. You can check it out.
Legally Blonde. You will love my column today in the Washington Times.
A great piece.
Thank you, Monica.
Thank you. You bet.
Thank you, Doug.
Thank you.
All right, then.
Priceless. Make sure you check it out. All right, let's go to the Senate, where Harry Reid is beginning his farewell address today, and we will keep an eye on it. We will be right back with more in America's Newsroom after this.
Did the best they could.
Brand new members of the Trump cabinet about to be revealed. 6 spots are still open as the cabinet takes shape. President-elect Trump saying that he is going to have more announcements today on this Thursday, so we look forward to that. These are the latest picks. They include retired General John Kelly, who will have the enormous job of heading up Homeland Security for our nation, and Oklahoma Attorney General Scott Pruitt to lead the APA. He has been a major critic of the current EPA. Yep. And so that's coming up as well. Welcome, everybody. Brand new hour of America's Newsroom. I'm Martha McCall.
And I'm Bill Hemmer. Maybe we could head up the APA.
I thought I said EPA. Did it sound like APA?
I mean, I'm waiting
the
for
Environmental Protection Agency.
I'm waiting for McCallum's name to be pulled.
I'm
waiting.
Very happy where I am.
Right on. Day for transition and travel. Mr. Trump heading out of town later today, flying first to Columbus, Ohio. He'll speak with the victims of the attack at Ohio State and then continues his thank you tour, holds a rally later tonight in Des Moines, Iowa, and we will see that live.
Mark Thiessen, a columnist for The Washington Post and a Fox News contributor. Mark, good morning to you. Good to see you here this morning. So let's talk a little bit about the picks that we've got right now. Let's get your take first on General Kelly. In terms of Homeland Security, there were a number of people who would have liked that job, and we'll talk about that in a second. But first, your thoughts on him.
Well, he's a terrific pick, and you know, there's been a lot of talk about how President-elect Trump is choosing a lot of generals. Well, in the case of Homeland Security, it's a great idea to put a general in charge because it reinforces the message that the battle against terror is a matter of war, not a matter of law enforcement. And putting a general in charge of protecting the homeland is smart, and Kelly's a perfect pick for it. Kelly, you know, one of his principal missions is going to be securing the southern border. He was the head of U.S. Southern Command, which is the military command in charge of protecting our hemisphere, and he was when he in that job, he was sounding the alarm when very few people were listening about Iranian infiltration of South America, the infiltration of Hezbollah terrorists who could come into this country and infiltrate terrorists through our porous southern border. So he's going to put a big focus on that.
You know, when you look at the process and how this is all taking place, Kelly's name first surfaced in the Secretary of State search. And there's an interesting piece in the Wall Street Journal this morning about how these vetting processes go. First of all, they're very public. You walk through the lobby. Second of all, he grills these people, and he tries to sort of get them off their game a little bit. He wants to see how aggressive and how smart they are about their subject matter, right?
Oh, absolutely. And look, he had a lot of practice on The Apprentice and grilling potential employees. So, I mean, I think Donald Trump, one of his qualities, whether you're a supporter or an opponent of Donald Trump, one of his qualities certainly is picking and finding talent and picking talent. And he's doing a fantastic job. I mean, this is going to be one of the most conservative cabinets any president has ever put forward. If you think about, you know, Jeff Sessions as Attorney General, Betsy DeVos, one of the nation's leading champions of school choice and education, Ben Carson at HUD, who is probably the first HUD secretary who's actually lived in an inner city, as opposed to, you know, talked about it from the ivory tower. And now you've got General Kelly, and you've got Scott Pruitt now at EPA, who's going to be a fantastic choice for EPA.
Yeah. You know, in terms of
you know, it's funny. You called it the APA. It's going to become the American Protection Agency under Scott Pruitt. So I think it actually should be the right name, APA, instead of EPA.
In terms of who didn't get picked, Homeland Security, one of the names that pops up is Rudy Giuliani, who did an amazing job with New York City after 9/11 and who may or may not still be in the mix for the State Department. Your thoughts on that?
Yeah, you know, Rudy Giuliani was a huge. I'm a New Yorker, and I was in the Pentagon on September 11th. So Rudy Giuliani was just he was a terrific mayor, and he was a terrific leader in the days after 9/11. So I would love to see him in some sort of senior position. He really put all of his chips on. It looks like he put all of his chips on Secretary of State. We'll see if that bet pays off or not. I think he would have been a great candidate for Homeland Security as well. So we'll see where he comes out on that.
Mike McCall was another name that was in there for Homeland Security, a member of Congress who's been very active in this as well. So it's clear that there's a lot of people that are in the mix, and that some of them, you know, maybe are getting moved into different positions as they fall on the list of somebody that Donald Trump really, really likes and wants to find something for. Talk to us a little bit about Pruitt, because people who are concerned about the environment, some of them, feel that he is not the right guy for this. What do you think?
Well, Pruitt's concerned about the environment. I mean, we're all concerned about the environment, but Pruitt believes it's great having a state official in charge of the EPA, because Pruitt believes that the states were intended under the Constitution to be the principal regulators of the environment. People closest to the land should be making decisions about how the land and how the environment is taken care of. And so President Obama has been abusing the powers of the EPA to impose a radical environmental agenda on this country that is killing jobs and hurting the economy. And Pruitt's going to roll that back so we can have clean energy development. It's funny, the Sierra Club said, which is a left-wing environmental group, said that it's like putting an arsonist in charge of putting out fires. Well, with all respect, we need to light a fire on this economy, and the EPA has been pouring cold water on the economy, on energy development, and all these other things. And so that's exactly the kind of person we want at the EPA, someone who's going to have responsible energy production, who's going to protect the environment, defer to states, but also clear the way so we can create jobs and become energy independent, both for our national security and our economic security.
It's going to be a shakeup at that agency. There's no doubt about it. Mark Thiessen,
certainly is.
Thank you very much.
So now we know who Mr. Trump would like to keep America safe. He's tapping retired four-star General John Kelly for Homeland Security. National Security Correspondent Jennifer Griffin live at the Pentagon for more on that. So his selection marks the third general to be nominated in Trump's cabinet. Jennifer.
That's right, Bill. In fact, it seems that President-elect Donald Trump is assembling a band of brothers rather than a team of rivals, which was, of course, President Obama's model for his cabinet. 3 Marines, all close friends, will now be leading the Pentagon and Homeland Security. General Joe Dunford, now the chairman of the Joint Chiefs, is a longtime friend of General Kelly's. In fact, he delivered the news that Kelly's son, Second Lieutenant Robert M. Kelly, had been killed in Afghanistan 6 years ago, appearing at Kelly's front door wearing his full dress uniform as Assistant Marine Commandant. General Kelly said when he saw his old friend at the door, he knew immediately his son was dead. General Kelly is the highest-ranking military officer to have a child killed in combat. 4 days later, General Kelly delivered an emotional speech to the Semper Fi Society in St. Louis. He called out the fact that so few families serve and so few are protecting so many.
We are in a life and death struggle, but not our whole country. 1% of American families are touched by this war. That is a much smaller result of families who were given all.
That was just days after his son was killed. I remember sitting next to General Dunford and his wife Ellen at a dinner on Veterans Day in 2010, Bill. That morning, they had accompanied General Kelly and his wife to Dover to retrieve their son's remains. There is no underestimating the bond that these 2 Marines feel for each other.
Wow, that is remarkable. Why do you think General Kelly was picked for this job? What does he bring to it, Jennifer?
Well, many forget that he was Robert Gates' senior military advisor when he was defense secretary, and that was a time when the current DHS Secretary Jay Johnson was general counsel here at the Pentagon. He has been advising Jay Johnson in recent months, in fact. He's been advising him. His last job before retiring was as head of U.S. Southern Command, responsible for Gitmo and border security, as well as assisting in drug interdiction. He's not afraid to speak his mind. Here's what he said, in fact, about the military being told to open all combat positions to women.
It will be the pressure for not probably the generals that are here now, but for the generals that are to come and admirals, to lower standards, because that's the only way it'll work in the way that I hear some people, particularly agenda-driven people here in Washington or in the land, the way they want it to work.
Trump is assembling a group of generals who are not afraid to speak truth to power, Bill.
Jennifer, thank you. Fascinating life, and what a sacrifice he has made for our country. Jennifer Griffin, thank you very much there at the Pentagon.
Remarkable man. So President-elect Trump is taking his thank you tour to Iowa today, but before that, he will make a stop in Ohio for a much more somber occasion. He will meet with the victims from last week's attack at The Ohio State University. Matt Finn, live from the school's campus in Columbus. Matt, what is the scene there this morning as they wait for Mr. Trump?
Good morning, Martha. Well, people are still recovering here emotionally and physically on campus. A short while ago, we spoke to a professor in his home who was here on campus that day. He suffered a pretty substantial wound to his leg. So people, the emotions are still very raw here. Now, President-elect Donald Trump is expected to meet with victims and first responders here around 3 o'clock local time today. Ohio State University tells us Trump's team prepared the list of people he would like to meet with, and it's not confirmed if the officer, Alan Harushko, who took down the attacker, Abdul Artan, on November 28th, will be meeting with Trump, that officer being labeled a hero. Now, on November 28th, Abdul Artan, a Somali-born student, drove his car into a crowd here on the campus, then got out and started stabbing people with a knife, injuring 11 people total before that police officer took him out. Now, there was some controversy over Donald Trump's initial response on Twitter when he tweeted out, quote, ISIS is taking credit for the terrible stabbing attack at Ohio State University by a Somali refugee who should not have been in this country. Now, we can't confirm if ISIS did in fact have anything to do with this attack, but the student was at least legally here. Now, next up today, after this visit here at Ohio State University, Donald Trump will be heading to Iowa, where he will continue his Thank You America tour. Martha?
All right. Matt, thank you very much. Look forward to that later this afternoon.
Getting some breaking news right now. An earthquake off the coast of Northern California measured 6.8, centered well north of San Francisco. Ferndale, California is the town, we're told, the nearest town on the coast. So we're talking about 100, maybe 200 miles north of San Francisco. Just crossing the wires right now. Don't have a lot of information, but we'll keep an eye on it for it. It's coming up in a moment here.
And an escaped inmate sparking a massive manhunt. At least one officer reported injured, where police think the convict may be now.
Also, Mr. Trump now under fire for appointing another general to his administration. Is that the case? Is that the trend? General Jack Keane will react to all that. We'll get his take on what's happened so far.
And Democrats fighting back, accusing the GOP of a war on seniors, as the nomination of Tom Price for Health and Human Services Secretary raises new questions about the future of Medicare. Senator John Thune joins us next.
There is a manhunt underway in South Carolina for an inmate who escaped a maximum security prison. Dexter Allen Williamson, he was serving a life sentence, escaped from the McCormick Correctional Institution on Wednesday night. Officials believe the 47-year-old traveled to Columbia, South Carolina, when an officer was stabbed several times in that city. This man wanted in connection with the attack on the officer, who was listed in stable condition. He was sentenced to a life in prison. Williamson was, for a 1998 armed robbery. He was also convicted in 1997 of assault and battery with intent to kill, and now, yet again, he is a wanted man.
There is a battle brewing on Capitol Hill over health care. Democrats accusing Republicans of waging a, quote, war on seniors and vowing to fight any GOP efforts to cut or privatize Medicare. Some Democrats also suggesting that Health Secretary nominee Tom Price may be in for a very tough confirmation hearing. Nancy Pelosi saying this: destroying Medicare and making seniors pay more is not what people voted for in November. We will do everything in our power, just as we did in 2006 when President Bush wanted to privatize Social Security. Senator John Thune is chairman of the Senate Republican Conference. Senator, good to have you here this morning. Welcome. Good to see you. Martha. So we're getting sort of signals in the tea leaves here about which of these nominees are likely to have fairly smooth sailing. General Mattis appears to be in that category, and you can tell me if you agree with that. But it looks like Tom Price may be in for a fight.
Well, I think the Democrats, they would love to slow down President-elect Trump's appointment of nominees and getting them confirmed in these positions. But we're going to move very quickly to confirm Tom Price and the other nominees that he's put forward. I think these are people that are very qualified for the positions they've been nominated for. Tom Price has enormous experience as a physician, also as a member of Congress who's been a leader on health care issues, and is ready to roll up his sleeves and get to work to try and repeal and replace Obamacare with something that works for the American people. So we're anxious to help him get into that role. The Democrats can try and throw roadblocks up, but because they changed the rules 2 years ago, he will be confirmed at 51 votes. And and so that's going to happen.
And that was the rule change that Harry Reid himself came up with, which now is going to make it very difficult for Democrats to keep anybody off of Donald Trump's cabinet. Is that right?
That's correct, and I think they may rue the day that they did that, because
and they were warned about it at the time, as I remember.
Well, we were, and we, at the time, obviously, they used the nuclear option. They broke the rules to change the rules, and so that they could get some of their nominees on the courts. But they also changed it for executive branch nominees, and those are the rules. The rules we're going to play by. It's going to be 51 votes, and that's going to make it a lot easier for us to get these people into their positions quickly.
So in terms of Tom Price and Medicare, is it truthful to say that he wants to eliminate the program, as is being said on some websites this morning?
No, I mean, there's just a lot of crazy talk out there, Martha, and I think people just need to accept and realize that there are a lot of people who are very concerned about the outcome of the election and want to muck things up as much as they can around here. And so there's a lot of just rhetoric out there that is completely unfounded, and I think people need to accept that for what it is. Tom Price is somebody who wants to make Obamacare, or wants to make a health care system work in this country, which means getting rid of Obamacare and moving to a new system that has more choices for parents, or I should say for patients, more flexibility for businesses, and hopefully more control for doctors and patients than what we have today. These ideas that are being proposed out there are just crazy, and I think they need to be treated as such.
Well, Donald Trump said on the campaign trail, I'm not going to cut Social Security, Medicare, or Medicaid, and that every other Republican is going to cut them. So if there are changes to be made, do you think that that can be worked out, given what he said when he was running for president?
Well, President-elect Trump has made a campaign trail about some of these programs. Obviously, we all believe in Social Security, Medicare, Medicaid. They're safety net programs. People depend upon them. But like any government program, they can work better and more efficiently. And some of us happen to believe that we've got to reform our entitlement programs and make them sustainable, not just for people who depend upon them today, but for future generations of Americans. And so I hope we can get into a discussion, frankly, of how we can make that happen. But I think the reality is that starting out, the first thing out of the gate when we get back in January is a vote here in the Senate on a resolution to repeal Obamacare and to move toward replacing that in a step-by-step way with health care insurance solutions out there and coverage that really work for the American people. And we may have a discussion about entitlement reform at some point, but first out of the gate is going to be Obamacare repeal, and then the process of replacement, getting a new Supreme Court justice on the court, tax reform, getting the economy growing and expanding again. There are a whole range of things that we think are priorities, and at some point I hope we deal with the issue of entitlements.
You guys get a lot of rest over Christmas holidays.
We're going to
need
that, yeah, that's right.
Because it's going to be pretty busy for you and for all of us who watch this process and report on it. Senator, thank you very much. Good to see you, sir.
Great to be with you.
If you saw the stock market this week, the Dow was on a tear, and Donald Trump has taken a hard line against some American companies looking to send jobs overseas. He's saying those companies will pay, literally. Is he right? And will Republicans in Congress get on board that idea?
$800 billion. Who's negotiating these deals? Who's negotiating these deals? Oh, don't worry, it'll change. It'll change.
New details now on the deadly warehouse fire in Oakland that took the lives of 36 people. City officials now say that the warehouse had not been inspected in the last 30 years. Authorities say investigators would only enter the building if someone applied for building permits or made complaints about something going on inside. Apparently, neither of those things happened. Investigators still trying to pinpoint the cause of that fire. There was discussion yesterday about a refrigerator perhaps being responsible.
Some House Republicans now signaling a break from Donald Trump and his plan to tax U.S. companies that outsource jobs. It's something to watch. Fast Eddie Henry live in D.C. now. How you doing, buddy? Good morning to you. Not all Republicans are on board in what sense? Who are they? What's happening?
Well, because this tariff of 35% on companies that ship jobs overseas is basically a tax on these companies, obviously. And you have Republican leaders like Paul Ryan and Kevin McCarthy who say that obviously in the first 100 days and beyond, they want to work with this new president. But they also have heartburn at the idea of going after companies that already feel like they're overtaxed, overregulated. There's going to be regulatory relief. There may be tax relief as well. It's something Donald Trump has promised. but this seems to run against Republican orthodoxy, and you heard it yourself when you interviewed Kevin McCarthy, the House Majority Leader. Watch this.
There's many ways to going about doing it. In our process of a better way, there's a way we deal with companies in other parts of the country. I think there's a lot of ideas. I'd rather see all the ideas put on the table.
It sounds like a no. Is that a no?
I'm just saying, why do we predetermine? I do not want to get into a trade war. I want companies to be built in America, and I think lowering the tax incentive is the best way about doing it.
And you can see the divide right there, because Republicans say they want to work with this president. They're concerned, though, about sparking a trade war. They've had similar concerns as well about that carrier deal. They wanted to save the jobs in Indiana, but are concerned that it ran against conservative principles in terms of the free market bill.
So balance that about, or rather with the message of Donald Trump, because his message resonated with a lot of people, especially in these Midwest states.
Yeah, in the Rust Belt states, also a state like North Carolina that's been hard hit by the loss of manufacturing jobs. And frankly, that's exactly why you see Donald Trump right there in North Carolina this week at one of those thank you rallies. The previous one was, of course, in your home state of Ohio. And Donald Trump is making it clear he's not backing down from these fights because he wants to stand up for workers, whether it's against conservative principles or not. Watch.
Our trade deficit. Now nearly $800 billion a year. We have a deficit, think of it, of almost $800 billion a year. You always say, who's negotiating these deals? Is a chronic drag on the growth and a destroyer of jobs and wealth in our country.
So they're going to debate back and forth. Does this 35% tariff make sense on companies that ship jobs overseas? But at the end of the day, you have a president who won in a lot of these battleground states, and that presidential power is going to help him in the first 100 days and beyond. Bill.
Got it. Thank you, Ed. Something to watch, and we shall. Ed Henry in Washington, D.C. Thanks.
So world-famous performance artist, challenging, subverting, and changing the way that we think about everything. Why the Wall Street Journal's Dan Henninger describes the president-elect as the Lady Gaga of politics.
There's a pair for you. 3 generals named for top national security jobs in the new administration. One too many or just about right? General Jack Keane will analyze this in a moment.
Is a Marine Corps 4-star general, the former commander of U.S. Central Command and NATO's Supreme Allied Commander. For transformation, this is going to be so great for us.